You shut up when I'm talking to you! You shut your mouth! You say to me, you little shit! How you got him?
Zelda. Flight sims. Two tried and true genres of gaming that have been thriving on their own ever since the dawn of time. But have you ever wondered what it would be like if you mashed them together? If you're anything like me, and you've wanted to answer this question since conception, you're in the right place. Today, I'm going to attempt to beat Breath of the Wild as if it were a flight simulator. But what does that mean? If you don't have any idea what this flight sim stuff means, allow me to show you. This is a HOTAS. This is a computer. This is Simu. And allow me to introduce you to my friend, Antimicro. Antimicro is a program that allows me to remap inputs from any kind of controller to act as a keyboard. If I use Antimicro to map the inputs of my HOTAS to send keyboard commands, then I can configure Simu to read keystrokes, thus allowing me to do this. I've done a couple of these challenges in the past, but normally I just beat Ganon and finish the game. Today I wanted it to be a little bit longer. I decided to step it up by eliminating every dungeon, every boss, and every ounce of sanity I had left. With the stick grasped firmly in my right hand, I woke Link up, only to find that this may be harder to get used to than I initially thought. Realizing that the parameters here might be a little too sensitive, I opened the program to adjust the dead zone of the stick. With my controls officially perfect, I was totally prepared to perform the most epicest of all Breath of the Wild techniques. The kind of move that causes even the best speedrunners to quiver at the sight of it. The kind of epic gamer strategy that... Being a speedrunner now, I've developed a very potent allergy to unnecessary cutscenes. To maintain my health, I attempted a shrine clip in order to avoid them. After exactly one attempt, I decided to just deal with the inflammation in my internal organs and watch the cutscenes. It turns out that no matter how hard I try, there will never be a comfortable way to whistle sprint. I find that in order to do so, I need to use both hands on my stick to push all the buttons required. With an obviously adequate amount of practice under our belt, I decided to take on our first enemy, a red bokoblin, sure to be an admirable foe. I guess something I never really noticed is how well a job Breath of the Wild does at making sure Link is facing an opponent. Even though I was nowhere near accurate enough with the HOTAS to hit those attacks so directly, the system made Link face the direction he needed, kinda like aim assist. After a grueling amount of navigating my own controls, I was finally able to make it up to the tower. Zelda cried out for help, but I silenced her plea with a skip cutscene button and scratched my head, questioning my drive to continue playing Breath of the Wild in the ways that I do. But there is no time to question when you're a speedrunner, only time enough to save time. And what better way to save time than to remove a lengthy climb down the tower with a fall damage cancel. Only problem is I don't think I can perform under these circumstances. It's not that I have performance issues, it's just that sometimes it's hard and I'm under a lot of pressure and I really don't want to talk about it. It might take a couple tries, but of course I'm always willing to attempt something like this no matter how many tries it takes. Oh, I guess I get it on the first try. Much like a military stealth jet, I used my flight controls to creep behind enemy lines and launch a devastating strike, taking out 33% of the enemy troops on the first pass. Of course, I never leave a job unfinished, so I tied up the loose ends and took the camp for myself. I'm gonna go ahead and skip over a lot of the plateau section, because honestly I've been doing a lot of Breath of the Wild videos lately, and there are only so many ways I can narrate myself completing the same sequence of shrines over and over again. So on to the end. I decided that since my evasiveness is probably at an all-time low, I would choose to collect a heart container from the goddess. That way, even if I can't evade an attack, I'll have a much better chance of tanking it. Leaving the plateau, I decided that navigating the land on foot towards Kakariko was a good idea, so that I could discover shrines to complete later for hearts. Luckily, the HOTAS came with the advantage of auto-run, so I can sit back during long journeys, grab my Wii U gamepad, and pretend like there are any games worth playing on the Wii. Climbing towers with my low stamina is a little difficult, especially since horizontal movement with my little slider proved to be a lot harder than I thought. Activating the tower, I jumped onto the nearby mountainside with the plan of going over the mountain toward Kakariko instead of following the lengthy trail. What I didn't know was apparently there's a stone talus right over the cliff that I landed on. Not just any talus though, a talus senior, which I didn't even know was a thing. Being a mere freshman, I knew that a senior was surely a hazard to avoid. Despite my initial fear, as I ran away I heard a voice in my head call out to me.
If you're a giant pussy, say what?
What? Oh. So I turned around and jumped onto his face, dragged my nuts from his chin to his hairline, and slapped the heck out of the weak point coming out of his skull. Then died. A second attempt was sure to leave me the victor of this historic battle. The third attempt went something like perfect. It only took me one cycle to bring him down, and as he kneeled before me, I looked him dead in the eye and defeated him. on my very first attempt. I made my way to the top of the mountain and jumped off to traverse greater distances by way of air. I'm realizing that I really don't know much about this area. While gliding, a guardian creeped its way unwelcomed into my render distance. I'm sure I can avoid one guardian though, fuck. It was a race for my life, combining stealth, the landscape, and of course, speed. It took strategy, but I made it through and entered Kakariko. First stop was the shop. I've collected a lot of stuff after killing a Talus and walking all the way here. I needed money to buy as many arrows and ingredients as I could. Getting sufficient food for this run will be crucial for our success. After selling all of my excess stuff and getting the supplies I needed, I left. Unfortunately, I forgot to activate the shrine on my way out, so it's unlikely that we're visiting Kakariko ever again. Like I said before, defense is of utmost importance, so our first few stops will be to collect an armor set. If you've watched any of my recent videos, I bet you have no idea what's coming. I decided to collect the Phantom armor, because it's an early set that's plenty powerful and easy to find. First up, we'll get the piece from the Hyrule Garrison ruins, but while we're here, we'll go ahead and activate the Central Hyrule Tower. The Central Hyrule Tower has always been kind of annoying to activate because of the many guardians in the area. This time around though, it was so much worse. Next was the chest piece, which can be found very near the pants. This one also has a guardian or two nearby, but it's much easier to grab. Third piece is right next to a Lionel. As long as you know where it is and you take your time, it's also really easy to collect. We ran into a little trouble, but we warped out in time. With the armor collected and plenty of food in my possession, it was time to get to work. A quick stop in Hateno village to unlock the fast travel point, and I was off to Zora's domain. The enemies on the way to the town meant nothing to Majora's Mask and I. Stealing all the weapons I could from them, I was becoming pretty well equipped for the dungeon. Carrying all this new equipment was sure to tire me. I decided to call it a night and come back for more tomorrow. Gliding over the final portion of the walk, I entered Zora's domain and made sure to activate the shrine for a travel point. Inside the shrine, I was attempting to get some extra hearts. Movement in here isn't much of a problem, but instead it comes down to how good my gamer timing skills are. Trying to knock the orange ball out of its pedestal, I start to realize how difficult it is to aim. Also, it was only after I finished recording this video that I realized how much easier situations like this would have been if I had just turned down the camera sensitivity. Despite having my sensitivity at its highest setting, I was able to navigate the ball through the shrine and to its new pedestal on my second attempt. Grabbing the sphere for myself, I left and headed up for a scheduled conference with the king. I'm sure this will go perfectly, and I'll be able to walk away with all the information and supplies I'll need to reclaim the Divine Beast. Looks like Muzu is a bit of a loser. No matter though, changing my outfit wooed him into sharing the intel I needed. Muzu told me about the Lionel on Mount Poly something that I surely had no idea existed before this. Usually you can stealth past this guy and grab all the arrows you need, but I'm not a usual type of player. I defeated a Talus. This guy doesn't even have a big health bar on screen, so surely he can't be any harder than the last mini-boss I beat, right? So I snuck my way past him and grabbed all the shock arrows I needed before meeting Sidon on the docks and beginning the assault on Va Rudania. Since aiming is garbage on this thing, I thought that destroying the cryo blocks that Rudania shoots at us would be difficult, but it turns out that the block usually pass by my crosshair eventually before hitting us, so I don't even really have to move it that much. With the first group of ice blocks deflected, I swam up the waterfall and took out one of the red things on his back. Rinse and repeat that 3 times in a row, and we're looking down at Sidon as we enter the shrine. Mipa took the liberty of showing us where the map was, and I made my way toward the terminal. Of all the shrines, this one's map is by far the easiest to get. With control of the shrine now mine, I attempted my hardest trial yet, moving my camera in a circular pattern. A mini guardian on the second floor posed a bit of a problem, but luckily I was quick enough to block his attacks. Sometimes I struggle to find ways to write in the script how I do things like activate all the terminals. It's just one of those things that's a little hard to put into words. So with that in mind, roses are red, violets are blue. I got all the terminals, but I can't find a way to write that for you. Waterblight Ganon was going to be my first real boss fight, but I wasn't worried. I was sure I would be able to beat him. Normally I would try and hit the boss's eye to knock him down, then spin attack him with a heavy weapon. This is not a normal fight though. My aim with this thing is so bad that it's complete chance that I might hit his eye. Best I can hope for is staggering it for a second with a shot to its head. The second phase came quickly enough, and I could see the end in sight. But getting this close doesn't come cheap. The price is shame. The second attempt went about exactly the same, but the third was a success. After about an hour, I was able to finally put the last spear in his body and destroy him. Mipha attempted to talk to me, but I didn't want to, so I skipped the cutscene and harvested her ability. After an accomplishment like this, I might be due for a break, but today there's no time to rest. I immediately try and make my way toward the Rito village. Revali's Gale will be very important for navigating over the desert and up the mountain for the future dungeons. Traversing the land and activating a shrine or two, I made it to the tower nearest the village. Here's the thing about this tower. You need to shoot one of the Malice eyes with an arrow, causing the pillar to fall, giving us a passage over the Malice itself. The problem with this is everything. I need to shoot the eye, and I literally cannot make any small adjustments to my shot whatsoever with my flight stick. Eventually, with the right angle, by some form of luck, I was able to nail the eye and activate the tower. From here, I can basically glide to the Rito village. Like normal, my first goal in town was to sell everything I collected in the last dungeon and on the way here. Then restock my arrow supply and grab the Rito pants to protect my lower half, but absolutely nothing else from the cold. After the shopping trip, I went to find Teba. I found nothing though, because I made the mistake of thinking Teba would be in his spot before I talked to the Elder. With the village found and a wasted trip to the flight range done, I decided that recording for today was done. I talked to the Elder and Teba's wife to learn that he was at the flight range, something I never could have known before. Teba didn't trust my ability to fight under the influence of the Hotas, so he required me to do a little test. It went exactly... yeah. Eventually I hit the last target and proved myself to have at least a 20% chance of hitting Va Meadow's weak points. Apparently that was good enough for him because he let me crawl on his back and we went to the dungeon. Meadow raised its shields, but it wouldn't be long before I hit the final bomb arrow to lower them. I let myself inside and Revali told me that the map was only a jump or two away. A mini guardian tried to stop me but only put up a mini fight. With the map in hand, I had control over the entire dungeon and was ready to get the rest of the terminals. Since this dungeon is flying in the air, there are many ways to skip sections just by paragliding around them. I got the terminal in the left wing first because I could just jump off the side. The only problem was that since I wasn't supposed to go this way, the exit isn't available. I attempted to get out a couple of times, but eventually remembered that I can make this a lot easier by adjusting the angle of Va Meadow. I glided all the way to the other side of the dungeon and barely was able to hit the eye blocking the outside entrance. Thus, another terminal was ours. The sheer cold up here is unfortunately too much for Link to handle. Who would have thought that only a pair of pants wouldn't be able to protect me from the temperatures this low? I had to leave and warp back to the Great Plateau in order to collect as many cold-resistant peppers as I could. After a successful cooking session, I was back to the sky to finish this up. I activated the remaining terminals and made my way to the deck for a fight against Windblight. This one was by far the most difficult fight of all the Blights. Mostly because Windblight is almost never near the ground, and when he is, it's only to throw tornadoes at you. Like Waterblight, I can just shoot him in his eye to knock him down, but also like Waterblight, I still can't shoot him in the eye to knock him down. I had to wait for him to come near the ground, then maybe get 1 or 2 hits before having to flee from a tornado. It took about 15 minutes and 2 deaths, but eventually I used a bomb arrow and finished him off. As soon as we left, I headed on my way toward Death Mountain, but I wasn't gonna walk. I was gonna fly. To fulfill my promise to you and play the game as a flight simulator, I was gonna BLSS all the way to the base of the mountain. I'll just do the step up, then walk off the edge, and... well, I got it to work a little, but not enough to be viable. I don't know what the problem is really. At first I thought it was the fact that I was emulating the game, but I tried it again later with a controller and it worked, so it must be something with Anti-Micro or the Hota. Despite this shortcoming, I was still on my way to Death Mountain. First stop, the Foothill Stable. I activated the shrine and bought a Flame Guard elixir from the girl that worked there. I tried cooking food while also refilling my body with G-Fuel, but somehow I ended up getting dubious food. Now that I was ready to go up, I started making my way toward the tower. I tried climbing, but it was as difficult as ever, so I just used Revali's Gale to fly near the top. After I activated the tower, I climbed up the mountain in a bit of an unconventional way and entered the city from behind. My first order of business was to take every bit of money that I can get from them so that I can buy the required armor set for this area. I could only reasonably afford the chest piece, but eventually I'll need more pieces to do the dungeon. I'm not doing the dungeon yet, and I don't have enough money, so when Bluto told me to find Unobo in a place where it's too hot to survive, I knew what I needed to do. Run as fast as I could, eating as much food as I could, and hopefully making it to Unobo in time. The part that's hard about this is when I need to use the cannon and time the shot to hit the entrance of the cave that Unobo's in. Luckily, I blew up the entrance and made it into the safety of his cutscene just in time. For making me come all the way out here, I gave him a quick tap of my sledgehammer, then took every everything he owned. I used a spin attack once more to cancel the burn, and then told him to go back to his boss. Ludo thanked me for helping him get his back pain medicine by immediately having more back pain, then making me have to do his job and go meet Unobo. I attached a cart to the rail and rode it to where Unobo was waiting. I used Majora's Mask to survey the area, finding that Unobo was under attack by black moblins. I knew that I wouldn't be able to defeat them with my current equipment. I tried luring them to the edge to hopefully use my sledgehammer to knock them into the lava, but every time I got one even a little bit close to the edge, it stood up and got away. I lured one away from the other because I was no match for two simultaneous threats. I wasn't able to successfully push the first one to his doom, but I was able to knock him down with enough spin attacks to kill him. I snuck up on the second one with Majora's Mask, and then he suffered the same fate. With the enemies gone, Unobo rolled into a ball and climbed into the camp. I shot him out to lower the bridge and then crossed it toward the mountain, but I didn't remember that after you cross the bridge, the heat goes so high that you need more armor pieces to continue on the path. I went back to the shop to look at the armor prices, but I realized that I wouldn't be able to afford the other two pieces, so I made the decision to put Death Mountain on the back burner and make my way into the desert. I should be able to get into Va Naboris much easier and then hopefully make it out with enough money to buy the rest of the Flamebreaker armor. I fast traveled to the Cryonis Shrine on the Great Plateau and spotted an ice block on the edge that I had never noticed. I stood next to it with my fiery greatsword, hoping that when it melted, it would yield really awesome rewards. It was absolutely 100% empty. I honestly don't know how to get into the desert by foot, so I climbed the side of the mountain instead. I stopped by the tower to unlock the map, and I accidentally learned that you can knock down these stone pillars by spawning a cryo block below. I give GameSpot permission to add that to their series of things you still don't know about Zelda Breath of the Wild. I jumped off to glide toward Gerudo Town, but quickly realized that I wouldn't make it far on my limited stamina. I walked a bit of the way, then glided again toward Karakara Bazaar. Once there, I decided that there's no better place to take a rest than an oasis, so I called it quits for the day and went to bed. With the dawn of a new day upon us and a themed shirt upon my body, I sold everything I needed at the bazaar and headed over to Gerudo Town. The weather was perfect for the trek across the desert because it wasn't too cold or too hot. After speaking to a man outside the town, I went back to the bazaar to meet an illegal clothing dealer. I bought an outfit to make me appear as a woman so that I could sneak behind their walls undetected. 600 rupees later, I walked right past the guards and toward the palace. I spoke to Riju and her captain of the guard, and they sent me on my way toward the Yiga clan hideout. Before getting there, I harvested a ton of wild berries and hit the Gerudo weapons stash. Arriving at their base, I burned down their impeccable security system. It only took a few captures and a few deaths, but eventually I made it to the end and collected a couple of silver and gold rupees on the way. The only thing threatening about Master Kohga's boss fight was his theme. I forgot how to do the fight for a second, but relearned the pattern just in time to push him to his death. I quickly made my way to meet Riju at the Western Watchtower and begin our assault on Va Naboris. It was very hard to stay under the cover of protection, but eventually I was able to blow Naboris' feet enough to make it fall over. Urbosa told me where the map was, and then I was off, but not before showing off my sandwich.
See that? That's the butt.
Based on the first dungeon, I think we know what's coming up. Hippity hoppity, your terminals are my property. With the terminals collected, the Thunderblight fight was on. I really wanted to do this fight with Daruk's protection, but since we weren't able to get into the dungeon on Death Mountain due to the lack of funds, we would have to do this the hard way. I failed to dodge his attacks literally every time. I stood in a perfectly wrong position while trying to hit him with the metal rods because no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to find him anywhere above me. Scarier than all was his laser. With 3 deaths on the board, I decided to once again call it a night and wake up fresh in the morning to finish him off. With a new day upon us, I downed a shock-resistant elixir and began the fight. I was as agile as ever. Some might have confused me with that of a lioness, leaping through the savannah, bolts of lightning flying toward it as it weaves its way through every one of them. When the laser came back, I was ready to parry it and finish the boss fight. So when the laser came back, I was ready for it. So I was able to beat him after he stopped shooting lasers. Urbosa congratulated me on my victory and we parted ways, leaving me with her signature ability. I immediately traveled back to Death Mountain to complete Va Rudania, and then finally end this challenge. I went to buy the rest of the Flamebreaker outfit because I had plenty of money from the Yiga clan hideout, but only ended up needing the helmet. I met with Unobo to travel up the side of the mountain. The sentries that Va Rudania let out appeared as no challenge compared to my giant metal cube. I struck fear into their hearts, showing them that I was a ruthless killer by launching Unobo off the volcano with a stasis rock. Every enemy on the mountain fell to the sheer might of the cube. The journey began with the cube and ended with the cube. I shot Unobo at Rudania to push it into the volcano and then somehow incredibly withstood the heat inside to board the dungeon. My very best friend showed me where the map was, but as soon as I entered, the roof windows closed and shadow engulfed the surrounding area. And yes, I do sound cool when I say sentences like that. And yes, I will take the Nobel Prize. And oh, what's this? Mr. President? You want to give me the key to America? That's so nice. Where do I insert Mrs. President? I downloaded the map and Daruk showed me the terminals that I would need to collect to reclaim the Divine Beast. I replied simply with, oh, those are some great terminals. Our terminals. This dungeon is likely the easiest of all of them, so I had no problem making it to the end and to the boss fight in a reasonable amount of time. Fireblight's also probably the easiest boss. All of the bosses will fall if you hit them in the eye, but when it comes to Fireblight, he not only falls, but he can get staggered for 2 or so seconds if you hit him anywhere on his face. This makes it really easy to run in and get quick damage in. His second form is arguably even easier since he does this sucky thing. It's basically a guaranteed fall because you can throw a bomb in it and blow it up to send him plummeting to the ground. With Urbosa's Fury and a well-placed spin attack, I got his health bar so low that I could breathe on him to finish it. I decided to kill him off with a bang by using a bomb arrow, but I didn't remember that when you're on Death Mountain, the air is so hot that bomb arrows simply explode immediately. Luckily, I scraped by with a quarter heart and killed him, making this my only deathless boss. I left the volcano and Daruk bestowed upon me his ultimate protection. The end of the tunnel was finally in sight. All I had to do was gather the necessary supplies to fight Ganon. I visited every town and every shop. I bought every arrow and every piece of food. With my groceries gathered, I went to the Great Plateau as I always use it as a place to cook my food. But as soon as I killed the bokoblins around my favorite cooking spot, it started raining, and I couldn't start a fire until it stopped. I waited for 15 or so minutes and then finally prepared all my dishes. There was no rhyme or reason to what I cooked. I just threw 5 pieces of whatever in a bowl and set it on fire. With the proper meals prepared, I was ready. With my mind cleared, I went into the sanctum. I was ready, but I hadn't yet realized how ready I had become. I've played a lot of these challenges and beaten Ganon many times, but normally I don't do the dungeons. When I fought him in the past, I not only have to beat Ganon at full health, but I have to fight the 4 blights beforehand. Watching as the champions released the full force of their lasers, I was left a little less scared of Ganon. With the Hotas in hand, I began the fight. I started strong by immediately missing a Flurry Rush, using up one of my 2 very valuable Daruk's protection uses. I forgot to recharge it before I came in, so I only started with 2. Then I got hit by one of his lasers. I was able to Flurry Rush after and hit him a few times with my sword before he shot fire at me, causing an updraft to appear, letting me fly up and shoot him with fire arrows. I always get caught up in the moment, and when he does this ground slam thing, I try to backflip out of the way. But this never works, causing me to use up my final Daruk's protection. He jumped on the wall to avoid damage, but I wasn't having any of that. I shot him with some fire of my own until he couldn't bear the pure heat of my battle technique. He fell to the ground and I rushed in just before he pulled out his axe, forcing me to do a Flurry Rush instead. With enough damage dealt, he revealed his second form. I treated it as no more than the time waster that it was, merely postponing Ganon's impending demise. I parried his laser and ran in for some stabs and slashes of my sword. He ran back to the wall like a bitch, but it meant nothing to me because when he fired his shots at me, I simply parried them back. With one final laser blast, he fell, I ran, jumped, and brought my sword down with the might of 1,000 times that I brought my sword down with the might of 1 time that I brought my sword down. But we weren't done yet. We still needed to conquer the most terrifying, most villainous, most intimidating, and bedwetting boss of all time, Dark Beast Ganon. Let's just move this over. This was by far the most vigorous challenge I've ever completed. It's not the biggest challenge I've ever failed, but you'll never know what that challenge was. This is a great time to mention that this video was sponsored by My Need of Things. The channel is in need. My capture card has an audio glitch. The USB 3 on my motherboard stopped working, causing all my file transfers to be super slow, and some peripherals that require USB 3 to work to simply not work at all. I simply can't afford these things on my own right now. So if you're interested in helping out the channel, feel free to visit my brand new Patreon that is linked in the description. Of course you don't have to, but I'm really hoping to get a couple of extra subscribers over there so that I can replace these faulty devices and make even better videos for you next time. I really enjoyed this time we spent together, and I'd hope you would consider visiting me on Twitch, Twitter, etc. And if you'd like to hang out with the hopefully growing community, you can also join the Discord. I'm super happy to be done with this video because I've already put a lot of time into it. But there's no time for a break because I've already got a new video recorded and ready for editing. So get subscribed if you'd like to see that soon. And I hope you enjoyed the video.